Hi everyone, it's Louise with louisemckayart and welcome to my channel. Today will be a voiceover since I had music in the background, so I'm going to have to explain as I go. And what I'm showing you there is my pillow paint, which is my PPG Multipro 47-3110. Now let me just start with this. If you are brand new to painting, this is called the bloom technique. And the originator of the bloom technique is a lady called Shelley Carruthers from Shelley Art. And she discovered this technique several years ago, and it has become hugely used across the industry of fluid art. Now, let me just explain here. When you're creating blooms, you have three components to it. You have your pillow, which is what I just laid down. Now, often I will use either the Multipro, which I showed you, or Glidden, which is GLN6011N. The Multipro I get from Home Depot, and the Glidden I get from Lowe's. So here I'm laying down my first color, and this is the colored paint that you lay down after your pillow. I will flash up the different colors as we go through this. Now your paint colors are mixed with your pouring medium that you create, and I have a video, 140, that shows how I create my pouring medium. I also use another very similar and effective recipe that I'm using in this pour, and I'll have that listed in the description. And if you wonder why people use different recipes, a lot of it is because of where you're located and what you can have access to, and also just personal preference. So I haven't mentioned yet that the trace I look for when drizzled off the stick for the paints is about 2 to 3 seconds. So like what I'm doing here is I drizzle it down. It takes about 2 to 3 seconds for that paint to lay flat into the color it's laid on top of. And for the pillow paint, I go for about a 3 to 4 second trace. But what's important is that your pillow is thicker than your paints, and then your paints are thicker than the cell activator that I'll cover in a bit. I'll also note here that there are so many artists out there with so many different recipes. It's probably good to follow one recipe of one artist that you like, because these paints don't necessarily plug and play with each other. And believe me, I learned that when I first started out, because I found different artists that I loved, and I thought for convenience and how easy it was for me to get certain paints, I can use one recipe from one person, another recipe from another, and I thought all recipes would blend together, and they didn't. So I thought I would just share that as well. I'll also throw in here that this is a very tricky technique because of all the components and all the variables involved here. But once you do get this bloom technique down, it is so useful for functional art because it's stable, holds together well, and really works like a champ. And I create all kinds of functional art like Lazy Susans and jars and clocks, trays, so many functional art pieces where the bloom just shines and is so attractive to people. So what I just picked up there is my cell activator. Now often I will use two cell activators, Amsterdam Titanium White and then the Oxide Black I'll show in a second. And the cell activator is what you put on your bloom last, which gives you those cells and lacing that you'll see in a minute. Now in this creation I'm using Australian Floetrol cell activator, but I also have my own American Floetrol cell activator, video 141, I will link above. It shows you how I create it and all the ingredients in it. Now this is the part where you're blowing out the bloom. And I like to blow out the bloom with my mouth and my lungs, especially if it's a smaller creation like 6 to 8 inches. But anything larger, I use a hairdryer. I do have a video 419 that shows the art of the blow. And I explain all kinds of tips and tricks on how to get the blow down, especially on smaller pieces, blowing with your lungs. So if you're new here, especially for the newbies, you're probably wondering, why do people take straws to their cell activator? And it's simple. It's to help spread out the cell activator and help the paints that are below push through so you get those really pretty cells, especially in the center. And the reason why I need it is this Australian Floetrol is about 6 months old, so it's a little bit thicker and needs a little bit more coaxing to get it to work. But believe me, when I first started out, people said that you only can use cell activator up to 2 or 3 days or less than a week. That is simply not true. You just need to keep it covered and out of the sun, and it'll last as long as you need to use it. Now, sometimes it'll thicken up a little bit, and you may need to add a little more Floetrol to it just to thin it down and get the right consistency, because you want the cell activator to drizzle straight off the stick and reconstitute right into the container. I forgot to mention that part. Yes, your cell activator is the thinnest of all the components between the pillow, the paints, and the cell activator. So right there, all I'm doing is just stretching the pillow paint to the edges So as I get ready to spin this out, the paint and the composition that's started in the middle will know exactly where to go as it spreads out over the edge of this coaster. Oh, and by the way, the coasters, if you have a floor and decor near you, that's the best place to get coasters. The tiles, it's the least expensive option. I also buy them at Home Depot in packs of 100. It's the ceramic tile that's glazed, and I think it runs between, I don't know, $14 and $15 for the 100. So yeah, here all I'm doing is just getting it centered up and getting ready for the first spin. I don't go crazy on the spin. And if you want to see how I have my spinner set up, I have another video you can take a look at. It's video 230. It's about a 3.5-minute video, and it shows exactly how I have this set up and lifted up off of this spinner there for ease of getting underneath it for cleanup and also for lifting up once you're done. The nice thing about this setup is that the coaster is off of the spinner, so I don't need to use a spatula to pick it up in the end and mess up the sides. Also, this setup works really well to keep your tiles down and not have your tiles flying off the spinner. So here I'm just trying to help coax some more paint to the edge there, so as I spin again, the composition will stretch out all the way to the corners, and also the corners are the last things to get covered because they are farthest from the center. So your sides will cover first, not to worry, just keep spinning gently, and the composition will finally reach the corners. I know I'm talking an awful lot through this. I hope you're not sick of hearing me yet. So another thing, white spots. White spots is what I'm going after there with that toothpick. All I'm doing is just kissing the white spot or the air bubble. And the spots are caused by typically the pillow paint underneath that has air bubbles in it. And as you start to stretch it out, those air bubbles will start to emerge to the surface, and they almost burp. And when they burp, that white pillow paint from below will come through. So if you're wondering where your white spots come from, that's the answer. All I was doing there, all I'm doing here is adding a little more pillow paint to the corners because I realized I just don't have enough to help that composition reach that corner there. So sometimes you have to help it along with a little bit of extra paint. So yeah, having a toothpick handy is always beneficial. Also, a straw is very beneficial as well. If you want to blow out a little extra in a spot, it helps. Now you may not be able to see this, but there's a little white spot there, and I'm just using that toothpick just to kiss it a little bit, just to make that white spot disappear. So I think I'm going to pipe down and put on a little music for right now, and at the very end I'm going to give you one more tip before we go into the finale. So one last nice tip here, especially when you're using the Multipro. The Multipro is a very tacky and sticky paint. I just want to show you here in slow motion how it looks. When you pull off your paint, it has that elasticity, and if you don't pull it down, you sometimes can get it landing right into your composition. Yeah, you don't want to get this far in only for a redo. So everyone, that's a wrap. Here are the final 4 coasters, and there was a jar lid that went with this creation for this commission piece, and I am so happy with how this turned out. Here are the up close and personal resin results, and I'm thrilled with these. This is a color combination that just won't quit. So if you're new here and you enjoyed this tutorial, please consider subscribing, hitting the bell and all. You'll get all my latest art tutorials. A thumbs up and comment is also greatly appreciated. At the end, I will link my playlist for other coasters so you can see other color combinations and other creations. Be sure to check my description. I also have a discount code for KS Resin for 10% off if you want to use some of the resin that I love to use here. And upcoming are the jars, and the one on the left is the commission creation. I love this color combination so much, I created a second so I can have it for myself. So that's all for now, everybody. I appreciate you being here, spending time with me. I hope you found this video informative, and up close before I close, I'm going to have a sneak preview of a Lazy Susan I'll be releasing this Friday. So that's all for now, everybody. Take care, till next time.